everybody for being here tonight. We have established a quorum, and I would like to ask Mr. Bill Warren to come and lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. On to awards and recognition. Dr. Joseph.
Thank you, Chair Shepard. So an organization is only as good as the people who are in it. For that reason, it's important for us to recognize and celebrate high flyers in Metro Nashville Public Schools. But it can be even more meaningful when our best are recognized by others in our community. Tonight, we want to congratulate one such high flyer, Mr. Bill Warren, Executive Lead Principal, who was recently named an American Graduate Champion by Nashville Public Television. American Graduate, Let's Make It Happen, is a national public media campaign aimed at finding solutions to our country's high school dropout crisis. NPT is the Middle Tennessee partner for this awareness campaign. Mr. Warren was recognized as a champion for his critical role in developing alternative pathways to graduation for Metro Nashville Public School students who are over age and under credit. Mr. Warren helped establish the academies of Old Cockrell, Opry Mills, and Hickory Hollow. These non-traditional schools help students earn a diploma who may have otherwise dropped out. As a principal and now executive lead principal whose career has spanned nearly 40 years, I can't imagine how many young lives have been dramatically improved by Mr. Warren's work and his dedication. He is certainly well deserving of the honor NPT has given him. Let's give Mr. Warren a heartfelt congratulations. Warren, you can come up to say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. That was quite an honor, and like all great things that happen, it's about teamwork. Well, I have the best team. I have some of the best principals that you could ever hope to have. I have Carl Carter. Back in the back, I have Carmen Brown and Billy Feldman, all principals at the different academies. And then we also have, we work so well together. We have Debbie Booker from the Cone School and Chase Norton from Big Picture that we all coordinate and try to find ways to help kids graduate. So we're very honored. We've had over 2,500 graduates from the three academies in the last 7 years, which we feel like is quite an accomplishment, as well as 68% of those have been on-time graduates, which has helped our rate quite well. So I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to all of you all to come to our December graduations. And if you've never had the opportunity to see our graduations, there's something to behold. There's some of the most special moments you could ever hope to have. So I'm humbled and I'm honored, and I thank you for this. This is very, very, very kind of you to recognize me. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's picture time. Mr. Warren, come on back. Picture time.
on to public participation. The board will hear from those.
Can we go back to good news is?
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. And the good news
Just 1
is,
second.
and everybody knows that McGavick High School is in my stomping
know.
ground, but tonight I'm going to let Dr. Gentry do
And I
the introduction.
know that meant a lot, and I do really, really appreciate it.
The sacrifice.
So we had the pleasure of being entertained this evening by the McGavick High School dance team. For the past 12 years, McGavick High School, under the leadership of Robin Wall, has had a dance department under the leadership of Miss Christiana Gentry. You get it now? Got it. All right. Could y'all please stand up? Come on, stand up, stand up. And then you have to raise your hands. I had to ask her to text me the names. We have Brittany, Tiara, Aaliyah, Angela, Jamila, and did I miss one? Bam, got them all. All right. Under Ms. Gentry's direction, the dance students have participated in numerous activities such as performing in the city's Christmas parade, church events, school events, basketball games, events, and several competitions. The students have had the opportunity to attend the Tennessee Performing Arts Center, to participate in dance workshops. They've traveled to Austin Peay State University Dance Department, Middle Tennessee State University's Dance Department, and Tennessee State University's Dance Department. During these visits, which I think is very exceptional and says a lot about the program, the students have been able to take dance classes from dance professors and with students in the dance departments that are majoring and minoring in dance. Members of the performing group have been invited to perform during the school year at several other venues, including the dance concert at Tennessee State University. I have had the pleasure to only see one of the dance concerts that Ms. Gentry does at McGavick High School, and it is a sight to behold. Everything from the artistry and the collaboration that actually happens with the dance department. It is a great example of how different departments come together within that school under the support of their principal and with the artistry of the dance instructor, Christiana, to put on a performance. And there is no student that doesn't get an opportunity to shine during those shows, regardless of skill level, ability. It is definitely a testimony to her talent. Now, I could say that it's genetic because Miss Gentry's grandmother, Carrie Gentry, was over the majorettes at Tennessee State University for about 112 years. Her mother took over, Judy Fenton Gentry, for the majorettes after, 2 terms after that. And her sisters, Courtney, Taylor, and Ryan, are also dancers as well. So thank you all for what was nothing short of a blessing for us this evening, and continue the great work. Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we're moving on to public participation. And the board will hear from those persons who have requested to appear at this board meeting. In the interest of time, speakers are requested to limit their remarks to 3 minutes or less, and comments will be timed. And at 3 minutes, you will hear. Thank you. And so I'm not sure if the names are posted, but the order is Eric Huth, Laura Leonard, Zulfat Surawa, Carol Trusty for the first 4, please.
We ready?
Ready.
Mrs. Shepard, Mrs. Spearing, Dr. Joseph, members of the Board of Education. I'm proud to rise before you this afternoon on behalf of the members of the Metropolitan Nashville Education Association and submit over 1,450 signature cards right here in this box. These cards represent MNEA's official request to initiate collaborative conferencing under the Professional Educators Collaborative Conferencing Act of 2011, which is Tennessee Code Annotated Title 49, Chapter 5, Part 6, in case you need a reference. MNEA stands ready and prepared to work collaboratively with you in establishing the Special Questions Committee in accordance with the law. As you may know, the Special Questions Committee will be charged with the responsibility of conducting an election of the professional employees of Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools to determine whether to engage in collaborative conferencing, which is Tennessee's multi-party teacher bargaining process, and to identify which organizations may represent teachers in Nashville. MNEA is the only teacher organization to have represented teachers in Nashville continuously since the formation of Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools in 1964. And we look forward to this opportunity to strengthen the voice of teachers in our district. I'm going to entrust this box, which has a letter in it to you, Mrs. Shepard and Dr. Joseph. It also has a list of nearly everyone who signed the cards. There were 3 that I added tonight at the top, but they're all in here organized. You should be able to verify them pretty well. So thank you all for all you do for the students of Nashville.
Thank you.
It's in good hands.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Laura Leonard, a French teacher at Glencliff High School, and I'm here to share some ideas that I have about teacher autonomy. My experience is that teachers have far too little freedom while we're still held accountable for test scores and the progress of students. Teachers not only do not control what happens at home with students, but we often don't control what happens within our very own classrooms. This is the very definition of stress which influences teachers to leave, and that is my primary concern where teacher autonomy is concerned. We know that principals have autonomy. For example, they choose, assign, and dismiss members of their faculty to specific positions. They also often transfer teachers. In addition, they make curriculum and scheduling decisions. They are in charge of the budget and school building and grounds. They make many decisions every day. They have choices. We also know that students and parents have choices. For instance, students may attend a school outside their zoned school. They may attend a magnet school. They may attend a charter school. They may stay home and receive an education there. They may opt out of certain programs. Teachers, on the other hand, have far too few options. We go where we are told to go. We teach what we are told to teach, certified or not, comfortable or not. We do not control our meeting schedules, planning times, lunches or lack thereof. Many aspects of our evaluations, sometimes not even the temperature of our classrooms, which we are required to keep unlocked. We do not choose standards or many tests. Our planning times are regularly taken away for meetings, translating, or subbing, often without pay. Our lunches are limited and reduced to as little as 18 minutes. And now we teachers don't even control our own image. Our likenesses, as well as those of our students, can be taken from us under pain of formal written reprimand in the form of videotaping in our classrooms. Of course, in this particular situation, parents and students are not notified, nor is their permission requested either. The point is, teachers need autonomy in order to deliver appropriate instruction in a comfortable environment, which will allow for the instruction to be successful. Teacher autonomy, therefore, is essential for student learning. I ask that you consider allowing teachers to control the temperature of their classrooms, lock their doors, say no to videotaping of their classes, get an absolute minimum of a 30-minute duty-free lunch daily, get a duty-free planning period every single day, choose their placements, teach what they are certified to teach, and I thank you for listening.
Hello, my name is Zulfat, and I thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. I am the immediate past chair of the American Muslim Advisory Council, an organization that works with Muslims across Tennessee. But tonight, I'm not in front of you as the past chair of AMAC, but as a parent of an 11-year-old. You all know what's been going on in the political climate of our country and the rhetoric that has followed. Unfortunately, this rhetoric had led to a lot of our kids being bullied in schools and a lot of them being made fun of. I want to share with you a personal story. I picked up my daughter about 4 weeks ago from school. As she was getting in the car, a young lady yelled, "Goodbye, Sophia, I hope you're not going to bomb us." I got down and talked to the young lady. She said, "Well, we were just playing." And I told her that's not something you play about. She also made it sound as if it wasn't just, oh, we were just playing, means that it's a lot of them. After talking to my daughter, I also found out that another kid has also insinuated that she might have a bomb under her jacket. And on another occasion, somebody tried to pull off her headscarf. This is something that I witnessed myself that happened to my child. I've been an advocate for a lot of years, but I've never seen anything like that up close. And I know that for that one incident, there's a lot that are not reported. There are a lot of kids that are going home that are not talking to their parents, and we have a lot of parents that even when the kids say something, they don't know what to do. So I'm standing here before you and imploring you to please support the anti-AIDS resolution. What the resolution will do is make sure that our teachers and our educators talk to the children about the effect of these jokes. I know some of the kids are just making fun and they're just playing, but it's not a joke to the kids that is being harassed or being made fun of. So this resolution will also make sure that the student that is being harassed know that they can go to their teacher and say something. It lets immigrants, mothers, and those that don't know any better know that they can actually go to the school. More importantly, it tells me that our school board do care about our children. It doesn't matter whether they're Muslims, immigrants, whatever they look like. Bullying, intimidation, discrimination of any of our kids is something that we all should stand up against. So I'm here tonight and I'm asking you, as a mother, as an activist, as a Nashvilleian, as a Tennessean, to please sign this resolution and make sure that all our children are protected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Joseph, I'm not here to fuss tonight. The first thing I want to say is thank you. I came to you earlier in the year and I discussed with you a problem with our non-English speaking students. Dr. Joseph, you've solved it. You may not even know that you did, but you bought the Edgenuity program to replace A+. It translates into 20 different languages, and we can now keep our non-English speaking students current in their content area classes. So thank you very much for doing that. But that's not the only reason I'm here tonight. I want to talk to you about time. We have a wonderful new assistant principal in our building, Dr. Atwell, who brought us a new planning form. It came out of Madeline Hunter at Vanderbilt University back in the 80s, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the test classrooms for it. So I'm very much in favor of it. It is an excellent planning document, but it takes about 20 minutes to fill in, and you have to have one for every class for every day. I have 3 preps. That means in 10 days, I have to have 30 pages. That's a lot of time for me to do it the way it should be done. Somebody needs to take a look at what happened in the old administration to our planning time. All you have to do is put planning in the name of a meeting, and somebody thinks it's okay. But I need that time to really plan. I need that time to grade papers. I need that time to figure out which child needs what. I don't need to sit in one more meeting for 1 more hour and listen to people talk at me. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Joseph, could we form a committee, and I'll volunteer to be a teacher on it, that actually sits down, talks to teachers, and decides what kind of time we need to do to make our children the exceptional performers in our schools. Because if the teachers don't have time to put it together, it's not going to happen. And I hope I can come back in 3 or 4 months and say thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next 4, Tallulah Crawley, Andrea Flores, Jennifer Yoder, and Patricia Hand. Tallulah Crawley, not here? Okay, Andrea Flores.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. Just a quick note, the other speakers who have elementary age children were not able to get here to a 5 o'clock meeting. One speaker, Leah Spira, did send me a statement that I would like to read to you after my time. So in 1 week, parents at Westmead were able to collect nearly 100 signatures from parents and friends of Westmead students. We were notified by our kindergarten teacher that budget cuts and low student numbers had caused a discontinuation of our computer class. This is after the school year began, when our students came home very excited about what they had learned, showing us which websites that their computer teacher had taught them. And that was just taken away from them with no explanation. And as you can imagine, trying to explain to an elementary student why they no longer have a computer teacher is pretty difficult. Given our $834 million operating budget, we should really be talking about expanding programs. It's very clear that this $33 million increase from last year is not getting to our students. And this instructor-led computer class is vital in this 21st century. And I'm really disappointed that I have to come and explain why that is an essential tool in this day and age. And I trust that you will listen to the 100 parents that have signed this and advocate for refunding that computer program. We're asking that it be done by the end of the second quarter. We don't have time to waste because this is time that our children are losing, learning these basic typing skills, word processing, safety with internet, et cetera. So we are really urging you to find a way to reallocate funds and taking this undue burden off of principals choosing between bad and worse for their students. I'll also share with you, as I speak with more parents, I'm realizing that this is not limited to Westmead. Jones Padea has also phased out their computer teacher as well, first reducing it to a part-time, and now it's gone completely. Being a STEM component, it's extremely vital, and we ask that you really reconsider moving the budget so that our principals are not tasked with this difficult choice. Thank you. I will now read Leah Spira's, she was one of the listed speakers, statement. She says, "Good evening. I wanted to take a few minutes to explain the importance of computer class to our elementary age students in particular. The computer class has provided my child with a way to learn how to navigate a computer and keyboard in an easily accessible way. Everything is done via computer now. This is imperative the students learn these skills before they enter middle school. Computers are fun and an additional teaching tool for parents, teachers, and students alike. Losing this class has made it much more difficult for children to learn the important, basic, and necessary skills needed to get an entry-level job. There is an expectation on parents to teach these skills as well, but not everyone has the tools at home that the school is fortunate enough to have. This gives some children severe disadvantages compared to others simply because of their parents' financial situation. The computers are there, sitting empty, in the library. The children need to learn how to use them, and we need the funds to provide someone who can appropriately teach them. Please reconsider pulling the funds and help us find a good teacher that can show our kids the wonders of computers and how they can help them in the future. Thank you, Leah Spira." Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Kale.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Amanda Kale, and I am an MNPS teacher. I'm here for much the same reason that I was last month, to talk from the perspective of a teacher about what is working and what is not. But before I do that, I want to say that I come here month after month, not because I think I'm smarter or any more qualified than anyone in a leadership position, but because honestly and truly I care very deeply about this district. I care about the students, I care about the teachers, the men and the women who have committed themselves to this work. I do it because I do it because collectively, teachers have taken too many surveys, talked in too many focus groups, and seen too little change. I do it because I don't want teachers to quit anymore, because I'm tired of them quitting or being forced out, because I'm tired of seeing classrooms with permanent subs or a revolving door of teachers or no teacher at all, especially in the schools that serve our most vulnerable students. I'm tired of the time that's wasted by the churn. And I do it because I believe in democracy and in empowering the voices of the grassroots in order to shape policy, and because I believe in solutions. So from a teacher's perspective, here's what I offer. Number one, we need to reduce class sizes. Even the most talented teacher cannot effectively differentiate for a classroom of 40. I know there are state and district limits on class sizes, but I'm telling you, they're not followed, probably because principals are juggling budgets to get support personnel and specialized teachers like EE and EL. Number two, do what must be done to ensure we have a reliable source of substitute teachers. Number three, create system-wide comprehensive support for a restorative justice program that is sustainable and realistic. Number four, push for equity in our schools with all your heart. Students who score low on tests deserve the same rich learning experiences as those who score high. Standardized tests have done nothing but label poor kids, immigrants, and those with disabilities failures and punish their teachers while rewarding rich schools. That should not be what drives our district. And five, let teachers teach. Make that the mantra of the district. Think about every required assessment, every new mandate, every extra thing, and ask, will this support or hinder a teacher? Give us the time to plan and collaborate. Protect instructional and planning time as if they were the most prized resource in the whole district, because they are. Everything in education comes down to the interaction between teacher and students. And if that thought is placed at the very top of the hierarchy of this district, that's when we will see real change. Thank you.
Yeah. Moving on to governance issues. First on the agenda is the consent agenda. Ms. Berry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The consent agenda reads as follows. 1A, recommended award of contract for the new Cane Ridge Area Elementary School, Orion Building Corporation. B, recommended award of contract for professional services, facility assessment, and master planning services, MGT of America Consulting, LLC. C, recommended award of contract for professional services, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical engineering, Envision Advantage, LLC. D, awarding of purchases and contracts. 1, Cook's Pest Control, Incorporated. 2, Dell Marketing, LP. 3, Train US, Incorporated. E, compulsory attendance waivers. Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second. All in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 2. Mr. Pinkston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to first, before I talk about this resolution that I'm bringing to the board floor tonight, first say thank you to a couple of my personal heroes who spoke tonight at public participation. Zulfat Suhara, thank you for your leadership in our community and for helping us all be better people. And Amanda Kale, for your strong teacher voice as always, and we're so grateful for you. As I mentioned at the last board meeting, this week Local Progress, which is a coalition of local elected officials across the country, is conducting a week of action this week to denounce hate speech against Muslims. All over the country this week, city councils and school boards are passing resolutions condemning hate speech and offering moral support to our Muslim citizens and students who have been subjected, unfortunately, to a lot of harassment during this political season. As recently as yesterday, U.S. Secretary of Education John King said he's concerned about the effects the current political atmosphere has had on Muslim and immigrant students in American public schools. As leaders of the most diverse school system in Tennessee and one of the most diverse in the nation, I think it's important for us, less than a month before Election Day, to speak up and let all of our students and families know that we've got their backs. So I'm bringing a resolution tonight, which is similar to the ones that are being passed all over the country this week, expressing support for our Muslim students, many of whom attend schools in the areas of town that I represent, as well as the schools represented by Ms. Shepard, Dr. Brandon, Ms. Hunter, and others of you. So with that, may I read it aloud? This is a resolution condemning violence and hate speech against Muslims and Muslim students. Whereas the United States was founded by immigrants who enshrined freedom of religion as one of our nation's fundamental legal and ethical principles, and whereas there are more than 3 million Muslims living in the United States today and an estimated 30,000 living in Nashville and Davidson County, contributing to our economy, our social and political life, and our culture, and whereas Arab and Muslim Americans and those perceived as Muslims are frequently the targets of abusive and discriminatory practices, and whereas the recent escalation of hateful rhetoric against Muslims, immigrants, and people of color is especially harmful to children as it has a negative impact on their psychological well-being, the health of their peer relationships, and their ability to thrive in school, and whereas Muslim students across the country have reported instances of discrimination based on their religion and or race, and whereas there are an estimated 2,000 Muslim students in Metro Nashville Public Schools who contribute to the vitality of our learning environment and whose families form an integral part of our school communities, and whereas providing a safe school environment ensures that both the physical and emotional safety of students creates the conditions necessary to foster academic achievement, and whereas it is the responsibility of our schools to educate students about the social, cultural, and ethnic diversity of the United States, Tennessee, and Nashville. Therefore, be it resolved, the Metro Nashville Board of Public Education, number 1, condemns hate speech and violence directed at Muslims, immigrants, and people of color. 2, commits to fostering a school environment that promotes respect for and curiosity about all religions and cultures and rejects all forms of discrimination. And 3, this is the important part, Dr. Joseph, asks the Director of Schools to ensure an educational curriculum that reflects the values expressed in this resolution via professional development of faculty and staff, the inclusion of diverse resources to supplement in-class curricula, and the creation of safe spaces for students to address issues of discrimination. And with that, Madam Chair, I would respectfully make a motion that we adopt this on this day, Tuesday, October 11th, 2016. We need to correct the date. All right.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
It's just the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do. And I do appreciate our guests in the audience speaking to this timely issue. And I can only hope and pray that after November, we don't have to, be subjected to that anymore. That's my hope and prayer. So all in favor of passing this resolution? Show of hands. Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Pinkston. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, on to the director's report. Dr. Joseph.
Well, thank you once again. All of us around this board table can agree that we have no time to lose in making gains in our lowest performing schools. We have 11 schools that have been designated as priority schools within our district, meaning that they are among the bottom 5% of schools in academic achievement statewide. The needs of these schools are so great that we've given them special status, and we've dedicated leadership and support through our Office of Priority Schools. Our goal is to make rapid progress, keeping them part of the Metro Nashville public school system and sharing effective strategies with other high-need schools within our districts. One of my first hires as a director was to appoint Mr. Mo Carrasco to lead this work. Mr. Carrasco and his team immediately got to work assessing the state of our priority schools and developing plans to support their turnaround. We were able to share these plans recently with Commissioner McQueen, and Mr. Carrasco regrets that he is unable to be here tonight to give this report himself, but we thought it was important to bring it to the board at this time. So in his place, we have our Chief of Schools, Dr. Cito Narcisse, and he is going to come up along with others to lead this presentation. And the first thing that Dr. Narcisse is going to cover is moving away from the name Office of Priority Schools and embracing a new, more positive, mission-driven name for our team who's doing this critical and important work. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Narcisse at this time, and he's going to talk to us about our plans.
Good evening, Chairman Shepard and the board. As you already know, we do not do this work in isolation, so it's going to be a team of us that's going to come up and talk to you tonight. and I'll just kind of set forth a lot of the strategies and things that we've done. So I'm going to have Mr. David Kovach, who's one of our executive lead principals, Ms. Latrice Gloucester, who's also the executive lead principal in the L5 Innovation Office, Ms. Katie Brady, that we're going to let you hear from an actual teacher that's actually going through this work, who's a teacher at Pearl Cone High School, Dr. Brendalyn Hayes, who's the Dean of Instruction at Jolton Middle School, and we're going to also let you hear by Mr. Todd Irving, who is the principal of Jolton Middle School. Can you guys come up? And then as we go through this, we will let them talk through each of their section, and then go from there. So first thing, as Dr. Joseph told you about, is that we're changing the office from priority schools to innovation schools. We really think it's important because a lot of the work that we're going to be doing in the L5 innovation schools will be about accelerating a lot of the work that exists in that office. And so because of that construct, we wanted to make sure we moved the negative connotation of priority schools. When a school is designated as a priority, it sometimes hurts the school as much as possible because families and communities think, well, that means that school has nothing else to offer. And so since we're going to be accelerating and doing some of the work, and a lot of that will be from an innovation perspective and trying to accelerate some of the work, we thought it would be important to begin to rebrand the office. There's three major approaches that we're going to be doing within those schools. L5 stands for Level 5. It's an educational term where it talks about high level of work. And within those high levels, there's three major areas that the Innovation Office does. One is it helps to accelerate student learning. So you'll hear a lot about targeted focus around that. Building capacity, not only with students within their work, but also within how do we engage with their communities around wraparound services and some of those resources. And then more importantly, having a much more holistic approach to student learning, which is kind of a lot of the construct on as we build the capacity around these schools, because we not only want them to no longer be schools that are in this category, but we want them to be sustainable over a longer period of time. And so it's a much more dominating work. And in that context of that work, as we're doing that work, we're going to be pushing to make sure as we have some of our targeted focus in our school district, which is around the literacy of guided reading, if you're elementary school with guided reading and running record supports, and our shifts that we'll be doing with high schools, there'll be an instructional model that will help to kind of build that capacity that you're going to hear a little bit more about. Let me just give you just a little bit of context and in terms of the Cliff Note version of this. There's been a couple of things that have happened over the last couple of months since Dr. Joseph started. One is that he wanted us to do a full analysis of what is going on in the schools. So here are the things that have been done. There's been surveys of teachers, focus meetings and groups with leadership teams. There's been teacher voice sessions. There's been classroom observations and data analysis around system structure, culture, resources. Looking at also the professional development that has been done. Has it been a one-shot thing or is it a long-term? Is there a plan? I think when we went to present to Commissioner McQueen, she was just excited to see a plan. And so we gave her the plan, and we're very targeted about our strategy and resources around that, as you probably will see in the report that we submitted to you. Also, we also reviewed the school improvement process as we were learning about what that context was to see what was kind of the target that schools had to focus on in order to get to their goals and what success would look like. So we asked that question, not only with principals, but we also we looked at having some conversations with teachers and also trying to engage some family members. And so that was kind of that piece. And here's what we found. There was inconsistency in school support. Inconsistency in process and structures, inconsistency on how even central office supports the work, variability in leadership practices, wide range of strategies, inconsistency of school improvement planning. There wasn't a very clear plan in how to move forward on that. So it was very, a lot of we call a hodgepodge in a lot of the approaches. There was a culture of stress and instability, not only with teachers, but with leaders. So that resulted in a high mobility rate, not only with students, but with teachers and leaders. A culture of punitive measures that was kind of put on by not only by leadership and teachers, this is just how they kind of felt, but also how they would feel just in general around how they thought the state would look at them. So those are kind of the bigger pieces. A lack of viable programs. And the bigger part that we think, which is even a gold indicator that we're going to be doing, is just mobility levels. High mobility, not only with teachers, with students. And so because of the constant change, every investment you put in, if you can imagine, you can't get consistency because people are always leaving the schools. And so those are kind of the pieces. I wanted just to show this to you, and then we're going to go into everyone else, is we work from this model called the Coherence Framework. This is a model that's from Harvard University, from a group called the Public Educational Leadership Project, which is the Harvard School of Education that combines with the business schools that talk about how do you improve coherence and relevance and strategies around schools. And so as Dr. Joseph always talks about, he says, top performing organizations work from a framework. So we are very clear about a framework around how do we impact everything that we do around what we call the instructional core, which is the teacher-student content. So everything that you see is from culture. If you notice on there is culture, structure, stakeholder systems, and resources, is a much more holistic and cohesive approach on how we can help impact classrooms. And so with that being said, I'm going to pass over to David Kovach, who will talk to you a little bit about focus areas.
Thank you, Dr. Narcisse. Good evening, board members and Dr. Joseph. I'd like to say first that I started and joined this office in March of this year, and we are in a major transformation that's very important to our work and our students. An important part of that is this new branding of L5 and aspiring to greatness, as opposed to sticking with this negative label of priority. Part of our L5 strategy is the predictability model, which ensures a continuous improvement model for student achievement. This model is grounded in data that principals have access to currently and teachers have access to currently. There's nothing new generated by the district to create this work. But what it does is it encourages principals and teachers to predict what student achievement will be like at the end of the year. We shouldn't be surprised at the end of the year with how well our students are doing. And when they can make these predictions, now they have the information they need to make course corrective changes along the way. And this is really important work. That's that continuous improvement cycle. These tools have been developed and worked on since August. Most recently, 2 weeks ago, we had a very specific workshop with our principals on creating these reports so that they could begin working with us, tracking these predictions over time. The predictability model will address several of the focus areas and findings that we had problems with. It will create consistency in school support. It will create consistency in school processes and structures. And lastly, it'll create consistency and focused instructional leadership from our principals and teachers. I'd now like to introduce Ms. Latricia Gloster, who will highlight another important L5 strategy.
Thank you, David. Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Joseph. As mentioned before, our office, the L5 Innovation Office, has been very intentional and strategic about the work and how, not just how we support them, but what we do. Research supports that the highest mobility rates do occur in our priority schools. Such inconsistencies do directly impact and affect the expectation and the reliability of our instructional practices in our schools. This isn't just a local phenomenon, but research does support that this is a national phenomenon. Upon entering this role now 17 days ago, we recognized that we were tasked with such inconsistencies immediately and how we could immediately overcome such negative impacts, not just within our office, but likewise in the schools that we support. So we recognize that in doing so, we had to indoctrinate ourselves with ensuring that we have reliable practices and likewise consistent practices as the foundation of our work. In an effort to address such high mobility rates, we had to ask ourselves as an office, what are how do we define reading proficiency in the schools that we serve? And upon doing so, one of the models or instructional model frameworks that we developed is research and grounded in the International Baccalaureate Program, who supports reliability and consistency and predictability models, as David just mentioned moments ago. The 4 Pillars model, also known as UACE, allows our teachers and teacher leaders, along with our principals, to help our students understand the work, apply it, communicate, as well as extend it. We recognize that many of the students that we serve come to us with a poverty of language, and we recognize that through this framework model of UACE, we'll be able to adapt a richness of language acquisition to help our students understand the content, then therefore apply it in a manner that they can articulate it and communicate, because we know once they can communicate it, they've reached mastery, and then extend that idea and understanding across all genres that they serve. As he mentioned moments ago, we did just conduct a workshop during the fall break where many of our teachers and teacher leaders, along with principals, came to build their capacity around their understanding of this instructional model and this framework. And so this evening we have Ms. Katie Brady with us, who will share with us how this work directly impacts her teaching to support the student achievement in her class.
Good evening. My name is Katie Brady, and I am a junior English teacher at Pearl Cone High School and a former 7th grade teacher at Neely's Bend Middle School. I'm just here to talk to you today about how working with the UACE model has impacted my teaching already, and how I think it's really going to impact my future teaching working in a school like this. Several weeks ago, when I was first introduced to the UACE model that the district would be using, I honestly was very skeptical. I thought that this was going to be one more document that I would have to fill out for compliance and one more acronym that I was going to have to memorize. Over fall break, I decided that I wanted to find some kind of meaning in this new model, so I decided to spend 2 days learning about it with a small group of other curious teachers. Over these 2 days, I worked through my skepticism from past negative experiences with professional development that didn't feel useful to me, and planning documents that felt redundant. And I worked closely with the model to find out if this tool was something that I actually felt could be useful to my students. The answer I discovered was that it absolutely can be. Too often as teachers, we are forced to use tools that don't feel useful, and our time is not used to plan meaningfully or relevantly. We focus so intensely on the standards that we forget about the actual learners. As an example, the tool encourages us to refocus this planning, and as an example, I was able to take the tool over fall break and use it with a unit that I had already planned to make it even more relevant to my students. Now, in addition to just understanding how perspectives work through looking at different characters from different angles in The Great Gatsby, like we were already going to do, we're now going to apply that to the outside world and look at how politicians can be viewed differently from different groups of people's perspectives, and how a musician can rebrand himself by having us focus on different characteristics. This single tool reminded me to think about my curriculum in relation to the rest of the world outside of my school walls. It's not often that I become excited about a planning tool, but I think that the potential power that lies with the UACE model to help students carry their learning outside of my classroom is well worth the change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. I'd like to introduce Dr. Brandolyn Hayes, Instructional Dean at Jolton Middle School.
Good evening to the members of the board and Dr. Joseph. Last week, I also had the opportunity to attend the training around the 4-pillar model. I'll be quite honest, when I found out I was going to this training, I thought that it was going to be much like many of the other trainings that I've attended in our district. Not really geared toward my personal needs as an adult learner. Was this going to be something that I could Google on the internet, or was this going to be something that I've heard before? I will say that this training surpassed my expectations. The UACE model is a great strategy to improve the teaching and learning that takes place in our classroom. Our goal at Jolton Middle Prep is to increase academic growth for all of our students through 21st century learning using PBL. UACE is perfectly aligned with project-based learning, with the focus being on extending the students' learning and thinking beyond the classroom. When I think about the work that has to be done at Jolton, I think this strategy will help me help my teachers think about their planning and their teaching in a different manner. It will also help me to think about what am I asking my teachers to do in the classroom. It's very clear that traditional teaching is no longer working for the population of students that we serve. So we must work together to come up with a better strategy to help our students. My role is to not only coach our teachers, but to work alongside them to show them that the UACE model is a great strategy to engage our students in the classroom. I must say I've been in this district for 8 years, and the amount of support that we have received from the leaders of the L5 office has been tremendous. I believe they've given us a tool that's not only useful, but they're going to work alongside us to help us move our students to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Dr. Hayes. As mentioned before, we had several teachers and teacher leaders attend the workshop last week. We were also graced with the presence of several principals as well, and one of which is Mr. Todd Irving, who will share his experience as well. Mr. Irving.
Good evening, board members. I had the pleasure of going to the workshop last week. Even though I am new to Metro Nashville Public Schools, I'm not new to innovative schools. I've worked with a lot in California, in Compton, Santa Ana, Inglewood, South Central LA. So coming in, I know a couple of things has to happen, that you have to have great support from the district office, and there has to be a vision of expectation as far as changing the culture. One of the things I can tell you from July 1st, my first day being here at Metro Nashville, I've had unlimited support from the L5 Innovative team. They've been a great support to me. One of the things, and going into the workshop last week, I wanted to know as a principal what I can do as the instructional leader to make sure I have my deans of instruction involved, but also the teachers. Because one of the things I wanted to do was to come up with a team that was committed to changing the practice of educational instruction at our school through a non-traditional way. Because one of the things that we know is that traditional teaching is not what's going to be successful for our students. UACE is one of the components that I feel is perfect for our students. What we're going to be doing at Jolton is consistently asking our teachers, did you ace it today? We're going to be asking the students, did you ace it? When you look at understanding, communication, apply, and extending out into the real world, it makes it really relevant for our students. But it goes right hand in hand with what we're doing at Jolton, doing project-based learning, making sure that we're preparing our students for the 21st century. And PBL consists of communication, collaboration, creative thinking, and creativity. So it goes hand in hand. One of the great things about this workshop for me, when I talk about support, we had Mr. Kovacs and Ms. Gloucester there. One of the things that I've had as far as support, they will tell us what we need to do, but they let us use our own professional judgment and how to make it happen. I'm going to give you a perfect example. Along with my team, what we wanted to do is make sure that what we were doing with UACE and PBL was very, very clear to the teachers. So what we developed was a lesson plan document that involved each one of the UACE 4 pillars. Then what we created was a walkthrough evaluation form that was aligned with the lesson plan. So it was very clear. It was me as the principal, my 2 deans of students, and the teacher also involved, because it's important that we have the teacher's voice because they're the ones in the classroom. So we want to make sure that it was a joint effort. So now when we're doing that, what we're doing is now having stability of practice at the school. With that consistency and stability of practice, now we know for a fact that we can move forward and have academic growth. So just from the meeting last week, we developed a lesson plan along the 4 pillars, a observation form, but then we also have data digs where our teachers do regular assessment on a weekly basis. Now, by changing the practice and having a stability of practice at Jolton, when we talked about predictability, by doing this on a consistent basis and having a team of educators that's doing what's best for students, we know for a fact, by predictability, we know that we will have academic growth for every single student at Jolton.
So I guess we would like to open up for any questions you may have. I can go back to show you some of the pieces, but just want to make sure we just highlight for you just some of the pieces that in the findings, these are going to be some of our top levers that we're going to try to shift. And our focus areas, which you have in your reports, will be the areas that we'll be targeting and providing a lot of professional development in those areas. We put resources towards that. Any questions?
Dr. Narcisse, can you walk them through the packet that they have a booklet with that,
Yes.
those things? You want to elaborate a little bit?
So if you have your packet, I'll give you the Cliff Note version. In the first page, you'll see in the front, you see the breakdown of the innovation schools. Also, you'll see an executive summary that we provided you. On the next page, we'll provide you with the findings. Matches up pretty much with what we have on page 4. You'll see that we have the findings on the right-hand side, which is really very significant. Specifically, just want to highlight around coherence and some of these other areas that we talked about in a lot of our findings. We gave you some data sets by schools, so you can actually see a lot of the mobility in some of the other areas that are in there. And also teacher retention, all the components that we looked at. And we have a much more detailed and more in-depth data, both quantitative and qualitative, that we can share too if you're interested. And then we also have it by trends. I think it's important that you get to look at, these schools don't just become the way they become. This is over a period of time. Some of these practices happen. So when you look at some of the top performing schools, they shift because they're very clear about the practices over a period of time on how to shift to increase those practices. And then after that, you'll see that we are very targeted about our areas of focus. And those are the same that you see on the PowerPoint. You'll see there's an area of focus. Underneath the area of focus is the goal. And underneath the goal is a specific strategy that we're going to be using. And under each strategy, we can unpack that. There's a lot more to those pieces. And what we're actually going to do is, Dr. Joe always wants us to make sure things are targeted. We're actually aligning how we're spending our money to the areas of focus. And so each area of focus is where we're aligning the impact so we can see investment on impact for each strategy. And then if you go all the way to the end, is that you'll see that we've also put together for you we wanted to also give you a context of our leadership model that we're doing for the entire school system, which Dr. Joe's had us working on. So remember why we told you that we're trying to accelerate the work of the L5 Innovation Schools. So they're getting a piece of a lot of that model now as we move some of that work. And then last but not least, in the back page, you'll see the Coherence Framework, which we work off of as a system to begin to target our approach as we think about our work systemically. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Ms. Berry?
Thank you so much, team. This is great information. In my district, 3 of my schools are on the L5 list. And so instead of being a bad thing now, I'm going to see this as a good thing. And I'm excited to see that there's such a strong plan that has been comprehensive in review and very clear, defined ways of moving forward. One of the things that has been a concern is the high mobility. And I think it's interesting that not only did you look at mobility of students, you also looked at mobility of staff and mobility of leadership. And that I noticed that has been one of the problems in my district. In another L5 school that has had consistent leadership, they have turned around, went from a 1 on value added to a 5. So I know that with the right kind of leadership and the passion that this particular principal brings to that school, that can happen. I also like the the idea well, one of the things that's kind of concerning is Buena Vista, that has such a high mobility rate, the highest mobility rate in the city. And, excuse me, but I really appreciate the idea that one of the ways to turn that around is by wraparound services, community schools that offer extra opportunities for kids who have been void of opportunities. Nothing's wrong with their brains. Nothing's wrong with their minds. It's a matter of opportunity. And with wraparound services, we're able to provide those missed opportunities for our students. I thought it was also interesting the amount of time that principals are accessible for teaching and learning for staff members. That your research was under 20%. Principals spent under 20% of their time with the opportunity of because they have so many responsibilities, they didn't have the opportunity to provide the professional development that was so greatly needed. And the goal is to double that. Is that correct?
That
Go
is
from
correct.
20% to 40%.
That's correct.
So I think that's great. When we look at, on page 25, the making of an L5 principal, what kind of time frame? I wonder, can this be done in a year? Are we thinking it's going to take 2 or 3 years? And I'm sure that different people are different. So individuality will play a role in this. But what's your sense of that?
So the way we would answer that question is we think about it in a much more long term. So each of these components that the big shift that Dr. Joseph had us do when we started was around how we do one-on-one coaching and job embedded support for leaders. So for example, you heard from Mr. Irving, who talked about his executive lead principals and executive officers having conversations with him around thinking through his work versus where it could be a very more top-down approach from the office. So we're reshifting how leaders should function, the office should function, and what are some other job-embedded pieces that we can kind of work with various leaders. So, for example, with Jolton, with Dr. Hayes, she's a part of that practice. And so how do you work with the leader to do that? So to give you a time frame, we would tell you this is an ongoing. I think what we are making sure that we are defining for each of the levels is what high quality looks like. So we have a standard that we match to say whether people are reaching the standard or not reaching the standard. And if there's some weaknesses in some of these 5 areas, whatever the area is, then our job is to help provide that ongoing support to help them get there. And then how do you help them collaborate with other stakeholders in the building, such as you heard teacher voice or you heard leadership voice and those pieces. And this is how you move the ship a lot faster. So we would tell you this is a very ongoing process. And this is the leadership model that we're moving to also for the entire school system for all leaders. We believe it's a high-level practice.
Dr. Narcisse, I'm going to jump in, if I may, for one moment and say, so this is where, when we've been talking about an investment in leadership development, and I know there's been a lot of kind of narrative and energy about our investments on different things, as we think about the work, as we think about the work with, Arbinger and Gallup and Laura Lipscomb in training, see, we brought these partners together. So this isn't some type of, isolated, random acts of leadership. I mean, we've brought those individuals to the table together and said, look, we've got to provide some exceptional leadership within this district, building the capacity on our strong principals. We've got to know our principals and work with them through their strengths. We've got to understand within our schools that when we look at our L5 schools, as I've said in our Listen and Learns, there's extraordinary teaching happening in those schools. So to look at them from a deficit model and say, well, there's nothing happening is foolish. We need to go in and look and see the strengths of the extraordinary teachers that we have, the extraordinary principals, and just coach them in a way that we can have accelerated growth, because coaching and leadership matters. And so, but you've got to invest in that. I mean, there's no organization that gets extraordinary results that doesn't invest in itself. As a board, we have been working together and collaborating because we recognize that if we're not a unified team with a coherent vision, we can't move tough work forward. It's just impossible because when the going gets tough, we'll fall apart. But if we take the time to build our capacity to understand the complexity of the playing field, when we go out to do this work, we can do it in a very thoughtful, consistent, coherent manner. So, when Dr. Narcisse talks to you about that that framework that we call the Coherence Framework from the Public Education Leadership Program at PELP. I mean, that's what we're working from. We're saying, how do we create a sense of consistency and coherence that builds capacity and can move us forward, because this work is extremely hard. If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it. It's hard, and that's where we've just got to clear the noise and just focus. I mean, and I've said this, time and time again, organizations don't improve because they can't focus. And they can't focus because we allow the noise to impede our progress. And we're committed to clearing the noise and staying focused because we've got extraordinary principals like Mr. Irvin and his staff who need us to get it right. And that's what we're working to do. So I thank you for all the work you're doing.
Madam Chair, I just add questions, so if someone wants to go before me, they can. Okay, so I have questions specifically about the UACID model and the training surrounding that. Will this be, for some of the schools I see, they don't have an instructional coach or a dean, so will that be teacher-paid trainings? Will that be the principal trains them? How will you make sure that, as was stated, that low morale based on past PD experiences doesn't hinder the process this time?
So part of the investment, as we were telling about each of the areas, is about how we're going to differentiate the support for the high quality. So it could come in various ways. Maybe us providing more opportunities for them to be in training, maybe doing some job embedded after school. So those are the pieces that they're working out logistically. So.
Okay, and then last night at the Advanced Academics Listen and Learn, we were talking about kind of sometimes the randomness in pathways about the advanced programming that's offered. So one elementary school might offer IB, and then its pathway middle school may not offer IB but may offer AVID. Have you all looked at how this UACID model and all of the L5 innovation can partner with those advanced academic programs?
Yes, so we've been looking at that. We've also been looking at what are some offerings that could actually happen at those schools. I mean, those are some of the big pieces that we don't see. So outside of the instructional model, we need to have a clarity around, whether we want that school to be it could be a STEM school, it could be an IB school, it could be, so those are kind of the areas that we're going to be moving to. But what we wanted to do is make sure at least the groundwork was done around the practice. So as we move in, making some of that decision and working with the chief academic officer's shop, then we can be able to kind of work on those pieces. And the UACID model is a practice, and so these schools are still doing a lot of the work that we're doing as a district as well around literacy and those pieces. So we're just trying to vamp them up to get them to accelerate.
Okay, and support staff. Many of these trainings, I'm going to assume, will happen on in-service days that support staff wouldn't be there. Since this is kind of a paradigm shift for our schools, especially since we'll be moving to this for all schools eventually, have you all considered involving support staff in these types of training and these conversations?
Yeah, so the goal is to involve everybody. So as they think about strategically what the areas will be, that's how they're trying to define those pieces. So the answer is yes.
Okay, so we may, as a group, want to start looking at making sure support staff will be there on those in-service days and paid for trainings also. Okay, I'm sorry, last question. So I see that many of these schools are not pathway schools that are in this L5 innovation now. What is the time frame for moving the entire system to that? And let's say that Buena Vista, since they are an L5 school now, but their pathway middle school may not be, is there a way to make sure that that's still coherent, cohesive?
So our strategy has been to first diagnose the issue, which we have, be able to have some targeted work around it. And then now we're just beginning making sure to align some of our budget around the specific target areas, and then making sure that we're defining what quality looks like, and then what direction the schools will move to, whether they're going to choose to be a signature program or whatever those strategies. We're working through those pieces with the principals.
And great job with this. I mean, I think this is a novel idea. With the student-based budgeting, do we need to revisit how we make sure that there are funds allocated for these specific trainings at these specific schools, or have you all kind of already taken care of that?
So in our present structure right now, L5 innovation schools are actually, they're left unharmed. We actually give them more than what they need, and where they need actually more is around specific pieces around building capacity with their teachers and their principals and those pieces, or their leadership team. So we're investing a lot in their professional development. So we've allocated some money towards student achievement section, and so that's kind of where we're going to build out. And so we have to think about, when we do the student achievement, we're going to pay people more, for example, to do extra training. Are we going to, how do we make sure that we can involve all the support staff? So those are kind of the conversations that are having, and they're itemizing as we speak right now.
And I'll add on that too, because that is an important piece. One of the big concerns I've always had with student-based budgeting was, are we pushing tough decisions to principals and making it difficult for, and there's a lose-lose proposition, like what we heard earlier today with, you have a school that didn't have enough enrollment, they had to cut their computer science teacher. So the option was either A, do I cut a computer science teacher, or B, do I cut a kindergarten teacher and have class sizes go up? Well, they chose option A. And we've got to cut the computer science teacher to preserve kindergarten classes being small. Again, lose-lose proposition. Somebody, so we're looking at the budgeting, and this is where, as we talked about the analyses that we're doing with our resources, we're looking to see, are people getting what they need, and if they're not, are there opportunities to redirect funds to give people, those things that they need. And we want to give principals autonomy. Like Mr. Irvin's a veteran principal. We had a veteran principal at Warner that reached out to us, I guess about 2 weeks ago, as an example, to say, she wanted her teachers to be trained in skillful teaching, right? It's an excellent program, but to navigate how to use funds to get this particular, entity to work with them, it takes you got to have lots of permissions and things of that nature. But our commitment is, how do we clear the barriers for schools to get them the resources and targets they need? We don't want central office to be the place of no all the time. I mean, we've paid we've recruited and retained these high-quality principals who know what they need to do. So when they come to us and say, we want X, our question, and we're charging our team to say, how do we help them execute? If it's research-based, if it's coherent, if it makes sense, and it's systemic. It's not just a one-shot deal. That there's long-term capacity building, and they're thoughtful, about it. So, we're working hard to change how we do what we do so we can execute at higher levels.
Mr. Pinkston?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, for the information. I've worked in and around a lot of bureaucracy over the last couple of decades, and I think some bureaucracy is actually good, but the one thing that's frustrating about it is there's always this tendency to kind of recreate the wheel. So I would just encourage you guys, most of whom I know are new and are still kind of getting your sea legs under you in Nashville, to look back at the work that Mass Insight did for us about almost 2 years ago, look even farther back at the work that Tribal did for us back in 2012 and previously. They did, in my opinion, good work with analysis and research and flagging a lot of the same issues that you're probably finding already. But I think, just as a taxpayer and as a steward of taxpayer resources, I just feel compelled to say, let's make sure we're examining all the millions of dollars that we've already spent to analyze this stuff and make sure that we're leaving no previous stone unturned. But I have every confidence in the direction you guys are going and appreciate the sense of urgency that you're bringing to the work. I do have one request. I represent one of the L5 schools, which is Whitsitt Elementary School. It is I think, uniquely situated among the schools in as much as it's a high percentage English learner school. It's got 55% EL kids, 65% Latino. If I'm just being selfish about my school here, if we could somehow figure out a way to flood the zone with additional resources and supports in that school, I think it can help light the way for large-scale EL improvement district-wide and just kind of get a stake in the ground for Whitsett Go Wildcats. And appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Can I ask another question?
Dr. Gentry?
I'll go after you.
So it's funny to hear Ms. Buggs say, I think you called it novel ideas. And I think one of the texts that was referenced in your book is the book by Peter Singh, which is not new. It's probably very old.
20 years.
Like 20 plus years at least. And so it's always exciting to see, somebody stop and say, and I think it's kind of what, Mr. Pinkston is alluding to, is that there are things out there that are working today. And we know that education is different, but then it's an organization that actually is an organism, right, that changes. And so having a consistent framework and research-based and proven processes it's almost a no-brainer, but we're just not getting there, right? We've had, and I've often said this in conversations with others, that we've, in my almost 10 years here, 9 years here, we've had a bunch of stuff, right? And I always imagine, and I've given this analogy about everybody ever seen the movie Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? You know that movie? Where everybody's sitting in these little cubicles and they're banging out stuff and they want to have the next good thing, right? And they put it in this little vacuum tube and it shoots down to the owner and they're hoping that their strategy gets picked. Their invention is the one. And so we've been cranking out a whole bunch of stuff and they're going through these tubes and they're flying out at our teachers and they don't really know where they fit in the bigger picture. And so, just to sort of, echo, support, whatever the right phrase is, we tend to keep asking the question, how long? When? When are we going to see? And I think we would be doing ourselves a continued disservice if we didn't allow the foundational work to continue on task as planned, and understand that this takes time. This isn't just a framework of how we start to view things. It's not about new training. It's not about new courses. It's not about an additional professional development. This is a culture shift. And if you know anything about culture and climate, culture is the hardest thing to change. And we're not just asking our principals and teachers to have different expectations of our students. We're asking our students to have different expectations of themselves, regardless of their mobility situation, regardless of their economic status. We're asking parents to have different expectations of us as a district. And all of that takes time. It does. And so the investment is great. I'm just so totally convinced, being familiar with the Peter Singh work, my job is creating frameworks for viewing things even in a corporate environment, that it takes time. And so I appreciate the L5 growth line, because if you look at it closely, they are not isolated. The national standards are reflected in multiple areas, right? And so you can actually be developing at different rates in different areas. And so it's not, we can't expect somebody to come back here, because this is going to be the next thing, come back here with a chart that says, pour me a chart where all the schools are on this L5 timeline. It doesn't work that way. And so there is growth in different areas at different times for different schools in different areas. And so we have to develop a patience. And I would say that this is probably, if there's nothing else that we've taken the time to study and to look at, this is it. Because this now creates the lens through which we start to view not just our new, and mind you, innovation ain't new either, because this were the innovation zone. You remember that? It was the innovation zone schools, then it became priority schools. Yeah, okay. I know you thought about that all by yourself, but you didn't. that this becomes the new lens through which we start to see or expect to see the growth, right? So it's not necessarily the academic performance framework, but it is the professional and leadership development framework that we would start to monitor so that the academic performance framework starts to look a little bit different. So I greatly appreciate, I think, the cerebral nature of the work that is going on right now, and I look forward to being able to provide continued support for all of it.
Just very, very quick end note on that, to go back to what you said and to what Mr. Pinkston said, we have my transition team, and I keep bringing that up because they are doing very thoughtful, deep work, and they pulled this is probably the most studied district in America. And they have pulled hundreds of reports and documents, particularly that student achievement group. So we've benefited from that very capable, smart team of local, state, and national folks feeding us information, because we said, look, we don't got time to wait until December to get a report to say what's next. So as you get stuff, give it to us. So they read the work from Tribal, and they read the work from a multitude of other people that have come in a multitude of different areas to give us feedback. And as they spit that out to us in pieces, we've been moving and informing the thing, because we recognize we've got to build a ship as we fly it. So we'll simultaneously, but no stone has been unturned. When you see the transition report when it comes out, and you see the appendices, to see the hundreds of documents that have been scoured over, analyzed, studied, compared, and it's again, and for 50 years, it's been clear about what it takes to move schools, that you've got to have a safe environment, you've got to have a climate of high expectations, you've got to have instructional leadership from the principal, you've got to have good teachers, a climate of high expectations, a clear vision, you've got to figure out how to utilize time, and you've got to be clear about what you're monitoring. I mean, that's 60 years of research that's been, smacked, rubbed up, flipped down in lots of different dimensions by lots of different people. To say the same thing over and over again. That's what it is. The key, though, becomes how do we control those variables consistently within our buildings and bring it to scale? And that's what, again, even this Harvard framework is old stuff regurgitated, but it's just the way to say, so these are the things we think about, and this is how we do our business, and we're just making sure we're consistent and coherent as we do this work so we can scale up. And that's what large districts have a very difficult time of doing, because we just can't focus, and we're committed to focus.
Madam Chair, could I ask another last question, really this time? So two of these schools, Kirkpatrick and Neely's Bend Middle, are in the middle of a conversion. What does that look like? Have you been able to speak with the charter operator? Will they be working in silo, or will they be working with us to make sure that it's a whole school implementation?
So as of right now, we've been working through the principal around what that would look like. So we haven't I'm not aware of us having a much broader conversation around that, but we are working towards figuring out how we can be collaborative around some of these processes.
Well, I appreciate the collaboration. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Dr. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Not much. I just wanted to say thank you. I've been on the board for 2 years, and I can absolutely say without any shadow of a doubt, today has been the best day ever. I know we have a lot of work still to do, but this is the moment that I've waited for to see. First of all, I see that we're focused on our priority schools, and I, as a board member, want to do everything I can to make sure that we support you guys in your work, and also to help keep you focused. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the report, guys.
Oh, okay. Okay, our first 100-day update. And I think this is where we're going to cue a video. Yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah. Hey, today's video day. We're ready. But I'll get us started while they're queuing us up here. So within just under 6 weeks, with just under 6 weeks to go before my first 100 days comes to a close, I'm happy again to report to the board that we continue to make steady progress on my 100-day entry plan. We now have made progress on all 56 individual action items in the entry plan. 33 of those action items are completed, and 23 are still underway. So I remember 2 weeks ago, Dr. Gentry asking, well, what about the 2 that were out there?
I checked already.
Yeah, and right, and those 2 specifically were thinking about metrics for customer service, and then we were going to have a leadership team retreat. Well, we just had that retreat today, and we started looking at reams of data and really going deep, saying so here's the autopsy data. Like we see where we are, but now we've got to go deeper and say why. So why is it that our data looks the way it looks, and what are we going to fundamentally do differently to change the trajectory? Because if we keep doing the same thing, we can expect getting the same results. So today, we had all 4 chiefs and the chief's direct report. So there were 30 of us that were at the Martin Center, really scouring over data in a multitude of areas. And when I talked to them today, I started off by just talking to them about leadership, because I said, leadership is hard. You typically get judged, sometimes unfairly, and sometimes harshly. People try to build narratives around you that may not necessarily be true. But there it is, you must stand, because we have 89,000 children who are depending on us to give them excellence by design every day. So I wanted to give them an example of what leadership might look like as we did this work, and I wanted to share that with you.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not 2 nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
For the record, at you on the Cumberland River. Don't look behind you, because your feelings are going to go.
I'll
I think
follow
I've
you,
had
bro.
enough media on me, huh?
Can we all do the Macarena right now?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about leadership and the fact that just because he was doing something different didn't necessarily make it bad. People had to understand what it was he was doing, and just kind of trust that it would all work out to build that sense of momentum. And I feel that's where we are. Right now, as a team, as we are embarking upon new work that might be different to what's happened in the past and what's different than what's maybe happening here in our region, we might look a little different, and people might initially want to judge it. But we know better than that, and we've just got to continue on our mission and stay focused. But I reminded them today, to put it very bluntly, what I said to the district this morning is we walked into an organization where the culture that was inherited was ill. And we've talked about that, and that's one of the reasons, we've been looking at leadership and self-deception from the Arbinger Institute, because it says that, there's a germ in every organization, and that germ is self-deception. And when we are self-deceived, we don't see reality. And sometimes, in the midst of that, we do harm and don't even know that harm is happening. More specifically, the relationship between central office and schools was dysfunctional. There's no way to describe that any clearer. It was. Schools didn't necessarily feel like they had the supports that they needed, and they didn't feel like the culture was conducive of us moving forward as Team MNPS. So we've committed to working on ourselves as adults, and we've heard it described in a lot of various ways, that there was a culture of fear, there was top-down directives, there was a culture of ideological positions to prevent us from getting our work together to focus on common goals. And we said, if we're going to fix this organization, we're going to first fix ourselves. And if we didn't fix the governance and administration piece first, then nothing else that we tried to do could succeed, because we send the message to the entire organization, and how we do our work matters. And whether we're collaborative, we trust one another, and we can put these big challenges ahead of us was going to be our litmus test, because there's no way. Like I said, my fear would be, and this is why we're spending hours, days studying right now. And that's the purpose of that transition team. We are studying deeply, looking at every aspect of this organization. It's the reason we met with over 3,000 staff and parents and business communities to listen. It's the reason we have these 14 voice meetings that are happening right now on specific contents, to listen. So that way, when we move, I told the team this morning, we can, step on the gas and start accelerating, but we can't step on the gas if we don't have a foundation, and if we don't take the time to just get ourselves right. And that's what we've been doing, and we've been working to be succinct. So I thank you as a board for, being a unified team and, working with us to stay focused on how do we accelerate achievement for all within this school district. So like I said, there's noise that gets created when change occurs, both internally and externally. And we just need to drown that noise out, because if we don't, it's going to be at our detriment. So out of our work together, we've established some new protocols for staff to report concerns, and Ms. Shepard has written an article that's going to come out this week. We have our weekly messages that goes out now, our forward focus, and thank you, Ms. Shepard, for the message that you'll put in. Staff, you'll get it, I think, tomorrow. They come out on Wednesdays, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be out. But she wrote an article about, board staff communication protocols and our forward focus this week. And, that'll get out. But in the article, she puts it best by saying that we have established these new protocols not to diminish the relationship between the board and staff, but rather as a more effective and efficient means for us to do our business. because in an organization with 11,000 employees, there must be rules and protocols to follow, or we have this sense of chaos that we just don't want. That won't help us accomplish our work in the most efficient and effective manner that we could do it. So we, along the same theme, we've been focusing on effectiveness and efficiency, and we're working hard to look at our spending, as you know. So we've kicked off a thorough budget analysis process in partnership with the Metro government, and we've established some temporary guidelines for the district's employee travel, and this will all inform our future budget requests and our staff policies. So, all of the work that has been taking place over the last 3 months, gathering input from parents and staff and community through our listening and learn sessions, taking a deep dive into the key 5 areas through our transition work, reviewing data on programs by my team and me as outlined in my entry plan. All of this work is leading up to a new direction for our school system. And it was the charge that 9 of you put together for me when we came, as we said, change must happen. And so change is happening, and we have to accept with change comes noise, and we've just got to clear that, because we will, there will be a day where it'll all make sense. And I think that's one of the commitments and things I'm constantly thinking about. How do we better communicate what we're doing so people can go along with us? Because, as the things dance in my head, just, because they're in my head, it might not be in everyone's head. And you have my commitment to work hard to make sure we're communicating in a way that people can follow, as we learned from the video, that the leader should be easy to follow. So I'll slow down on the dance to make sure people can stick with us. But for the plan to be successful, we need our system to be operationally and fiscally sound, and we need a culture that unifies us as a common team, and that's what we're working towards. So at the next board meeting, I want to dive into our processes and timelines a little more deeply. But if you look up on the board, one of the things we've talked about in terms of our objectives are to build a leadership team with a shared understanding of our strengths and challenges, particularly as it relates to teaching and learning and culture, and a commitment to improving teaching, learning, and the organizational culture. We said we were going to conduct a data analysis of our current teaching and learning environment and our organizational culture. We were going to identify short-term and long-term plans to address student achievement and organizational culture for this specific year. So we know we have our upcoming retreats this week, and then the work that we'll be doing with Panasonic, because specifically, as we've talked about, and I know Ms. Shepard's going to talk about, our goal is to be clear about what will success look like to us this year. We just need the time to talk about this and the time to really lay out those plans, so then I'm able to direct our team to execute on those plans. And we said we were going to capture long-term solutions to address student achievement and organizational culture, because as Dr. Gentry said, let's not fool anybody. This work takes time. It takes time to just put the structures in place. Year 1 is about building a plan. Year 2 is about executing the plan you built. And if you did year 1 and 2 right, you should see some results in year 3. And that's just how this works. And that's if we did year 1 and 2 right. And we're working hard to try to get year 1 right. So we won't have to, change up and go back. But because we've been working collaboratively with our teachers, and I really want to give Eric Huth a shout out for his leadership with our unions, and also SEIU, that he's been a very able, vocal, transparent, honest partner, at the table with us, as we've wanted to make sure, like we said, we're not going to do work on the backs of people. We must do our work with people, because that's the only way it's sustainable. We've said that over and over again, and we talk the talk and we walk the walk as we're going on doing that. But if we click to the next slide. as in terms of organizational culture, we said we are heavily investing and focusing on our culture, leadership, and governance. And you saw an opportunity, saw a little snippet of that tonight with our L5 team. They're just one small piece of the overall strategy because, they have 11 schools. We've got 160 some odd schools. So we're thinking coherently about what happens in all of our schools, doing that coherently. We said we'd provide transparent and regular communications, and we've been trying to do that much more this year, analyzing student and program data. Again, our team just had the opportunity to do that in depth today. We'll be bringing that to you very soon, but we'll be engaged in that this week as we begin thinking about the work that we must do and prioritizing our work and being clear about what our work is, seeking outside and inside expertise and perspectives. I mean, we've openly talked about that since the time I walked in the door, and all we're doing now is executing on what we said we were committed to doing, analyzing our spending, which we've begun, because again, we've got to make sure that we communicate to the public we're spending the money that we have wisely because any new plan is going to require resource. I mean, that's not a secret that is a need. But we're going to have to make sure that those resources are targeted because they're limited, and you only get so much over time. So we've got to make sure what we have, we're using effectively, and establishing priorities to monitor our progress is what we said we were going to be doing. So as we look at just kind of the overall gestalt of where we're going, I wanted to just give you a timeline of our work because there's much work to do, and this is why I get nervous when there's noise because I know there's so much work that needs to be done. If we get distracted, if we fall off, it's hard to pick back up. But we're in October, and you've heard from the priority schools. We're going to talk to you more this month on our meetings about our leadership and culture framework, and more specifically, we want to talk about district enrollment and facilities use because as we think about resources, we've got to make sure, having those conversations about schools that are over-enrolled and under-enrolled are important as we think about our long-term planning. So the earlier we talk about that, we think the better. And we are immediately thrusted in this strategic planning process because, we're going to, by the end of this year, one big deliverable is a strategic plan that everybody has had an opportunity to buy into, give feedback on, and commit so we can execute. And that's why the 50 people on my transition team, again, 50 people on my transition team that are looking at those 5 areas are really helping us think through where we are so we can begin talking to the community and talking as a group about where we want to be. But as we move into November, we'll have our last transition team meeting. The 100th day is on November 18th, so on the 21st, we'll have a board meeting, and the topic of that board meeting will be, so what did they find out? And so where do we go from here? We'll continue looking at our budget. Mr. Henson's going to come in. There's been a lot of narrative about and a lot of questions about budget and how are we using funds, what's different from what was appropriated and things of that nature. Well, as you know, every year Mr. Henson has to present to you in November a revised budget because in a big district things do change with our fiscal priorities and our fiduciary responsibility, and he reports that to the board in November, December. That won't change. He'll work on doing that in November since there seems to be lots of interest. So we want to get that to you so we can answer any questions that may be there. But I'm blessed to this being my second superintendency. I do kind of know about my fiduciary responsibility, so I make sure I'm on target with that. But Mr. Henson will answer those types of questions that may come up. And we'll continue with our strategic planning work in November and continue with the budget analyses because that's important. And we're doing it early, and we're doing it now because when we get into December and January, we have to start talking about what your budget priorities are. And ideally, I'd like to get those in. Knowing them early helps me as I plan to present a budget to you. I mean, we may agree, we may disagree. Ultimately, it's your budget, but I will present a plan that takes into account what it is that you have communicated are priorities. So when we go into January, we'll be really looking at the strategic planning work. I mean, we'll have to go back on tour in the community, helping them understand what the transition team has said, where we are and where we need to be, and then we need to be proposing. So based upon what we heard, here's what we're proposing in a strategic plan. What do you think? Are we missing something? And we'll get that feedback from the community. And we'll continue to solicit input from our principals, our district staff on our budget priorities. So, once we propose a budget, then we want to go out and hear from people to say, did we get this right? Did we miss something? Is there something critical that we haven't seen? And make that process more involved, and having, so that way when we have a budget, it's a budget people believe in as we execute. But then we'll move into February. Again, continuing to identify those budget priorities. The budget committee will review our draft priorities. And March, we should have a strategic plan that's locked in on, that the community clearly knows what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we plan on doing it. We'll be clear about how that budget that we're proposing is aligned to that plan that we're putting out. A budget will be presented to the board, and hopefully the council will approve that budget by June, and we'll move forward with a strategic plan that's now aligned to a budget. So this is the murky time that we have right here, because we're building a plan, we're building a budget, and it's hard to build a budget without really having a plan. So we're listening and thinking through and reprioritizing. But that's the exciting work that we have the opportunity to engage in collaboratively. So, I look forward to your continued support, and continue to listen and be collaborative. And we're going to put forth a plan that's a resource that we believe will move us one step further towards our goal of outstanding academic achievement for all kids. And like Forrest Gump said, that's enough about that.
Anybody have any questions for Dr. Joseph around that? Great. Well, thank you very much. Very informative. We'll move on to committee reports on governance. Amy?
So we held a governance committee meeting immediately before this board meeting, and we discussed 3 items at that meeting. We first discussed 2 policies that the board has recently adopted. The EE18 Employee Representative Organizations Policy, which we adopted last spring. Dr. Joseph and his staff have agreed to review this policy and give us an update on implementation in the near future. We also discussed the Annenberg Standards Policy that we adopted about 1.5 years ago. Again, we were asking for a status report and the state of implementation, and Dr. Joseph and his staff plan to bring us an update at an upcoming meeting. And finally, we discussed and voted on a proposed revision to EE17 pertaining to charter schools. The proposed revision, which we voted through committee and which will next be voted on the board floor, ensures that prospective charter school operators provide, as part of their applications to MNPS, a detailed school siting and facility plan. And so that will be coming to the board floor for a vote. And that is the conclusion of my report.
Thank you, Amy. Anybody have any questions for Amy? All right, we'll move on to board chair's report. And I actually have a report tonight I'm going to read. Last week, like we do every year during fall break, we escaped out of state, and I tried to stay as unplugged as I can from the media world. It's very calming. Upon my return last weekend, as I was catching up and reconnecting, I was both angry and disappointed to see so many blogs and folks outside the Board of Education attack us and our director of schools, and so early in his tenure. Even the casual observer for the Board of Education can probably tell you that we don't often have a unanimous vote or a unanimous decision, but his choice was one such unanimous decision. Instead of constantly criticizing us with public comments, attempting to turn board members against each other or against our director of schools, I would suggest instead offering us encouragement and support so we can focus on being successful at one of the most important jobs we do as a city, educating our children. The Board of Education as a whole and as individuals, we have made great strides this summer and into the fall with our Arbinger training and then the Gallup Strength Finder training that we have received to date. This weekend, we will follow up with a retreat with the Panasonic Foundation and this very weekend work to establish common norms, protocols, and processes for working together with one voice. And all of this to determine ways in which we can monitor student achievement and evaluate our director of schools. Instead of trying to outblog each other, I would ask instead that you pick up the phone and call us. I would ask, and then ask us what you can do to help us. Offer us constructive criticism. As very busy Board of Education members, we don't have a lot of time for baseless allegations. So Dr. Joseph, our Director of Schools, has the support of the MNPS Board of Education, and now I would ask you for yours. Thank you. That concludes my report. And now we will move into announcements. Dr. Brandon?
Yes. I have a few. On November 16th, the Bellevue Harpeth Chamber Luncheon will take place at the Loveless Barn from 11:30 to 1, and we'll be welcoming Dr. Joseph as our guest speaker. The Bellevue Harpeth Chamber has expressed an interest in partnering more with the schools and the larger community around the schools, and so I would encourage folks to get involved out in my area. Second, I would like to congratulate H.G. Hill Middle Prep fifth grader Mia Andrews, who placed fourth in the Nashville Youth Athletics Cross Country City Championships. That's a mouthful, for grades 3 through 5, with an amazing mile time of 6 minutes and 17 seconds. This was a citywide event that was open to all students in both private and public schools in Nashville, and she has been incredible in every meet this year. And finally, just want to remind everybody that this coming, not this week, but next Friday, October 19th, is Walk to School Day, and I'll be walking to school with my children. I hope everyone will get out and enjoy a morning walking with neighbors to school. That's all.
Mr. Bigson?
Thank you. Just wanted to take a point of personal privilege and recognize Glendale Spanish Immersion School for being recognized earlier this month as one of a half dozen national Blue Ribbon schools in the state of Tennessee. Glendale technically is in Ms. Pierce's district, but I happen to be a Glendale parent, so I feel like I've got a little bit of interest in it, and would like to ask the board administrator at some point in the future. I think they're going to the principal and the faculty are going to go to Washington soon to be recognized, but after they get back, maybe have them in the boardroom and let us thank them in person for the good work that they're doing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Great things are happening at Maplewood, right, TJ? Yes, yes. Tomorrow morning, October the 12th at 9:30, we will do some groundbreaking for the new St. Thomas Maplewood Health Clinic. Yay, rah. The St. Thomas will invest in our school and our community as they remodel parts of Maplewood High School to create a community health clinic that will benefit our students and the residents of East Nashville. So if you can, tomorrow, join us at the groundbreaking at 9:30. Before our next board meeting in 2 weeks, the Teaching and Learning Committee will host a discussion of our literacy initiatives in our district. We will meet on October 25th. Hold on a second. We will meet on October 25th from 3 to 4:30, and we will discuss the various layers of our literacy initiative and share progress from 2015-2016. This is an extremely important meeting, and I hope that all of you can attend. I know you've heard of Ron Clark. Guess what? We are going to see him if you are interested. I'm so excited about it. We've been talking about it.
I can't tell. You're excited.
I know. Ron Clark is an American educator, and he's worked with disadvantaged students in rural North Carolina and New York City, and he founded the Ron Clark Academy in Atlanta, Georgia. Clark is a New York Times best-selling author and motivational speaker on the topic of inspiring educators. Clark has appeared on national TV shows, including 2 appearances on The Oprah Show, and in 2000, Clark received the Disney Teacher of the Year Award. Clark's first year in Harlem was the focus of the 2006 made-for-TV movie, The Ron Clark Story, starring Matthew Perry. So on November the 2nd, I'm pleased to announce that a few board members and administrators will be guests at the Ron Clark Academy, and we will tour the academy. We will watch Ron Clark teach, and he's liable to be on the desk. He's one of those, how do we put it before? Those lone nuts that many are following.
As long as he keeps his shirt on.
So we're going to travel to Atlanta. We're going to spend 4 hours with Ron Clark, and then we're going to travel back the same day. So I know it's kind of a long day, but if you guys are interested, please let me know by Thursday. On November 16th, we have yet another field trip. We're going to go to Pond Gap Community School. We've been talking about this for several years now. And we will have an audience with Dr. Bob Cronick from UT and observe the magnificent wraparound services that they have there at Pond Gap and see the after-school program. We will see the enrichment that these kids are offered after school, and we will observe the evening meal. I don't know that we'll be invited to stay, but that's okay. That will be provided to the students and parents, and it's prepared by culinary students in Knoxville. So if you would like to participate in either of these or both of these field trips, please let me know by Thursday. And I want to say a special thanks to Monique Felder for your support on these 2 trips. Thank you.
Ms. Hunter.
I just love Jill.
Love you too.
So as we've said repeatedly, we're hosting another set of Listen and Learn sessions in the month of October. On October 20th, I will be co-hosting the Exceptional Education Listen and Learn, and it will be held at Graymar from 6 until 7 o'clock p.m. So I invite all of those parents who've been waiting for this session to please come out and join us. Thank you.
Ms. Parks?
My only announcement is the Great Schools Tour will be happening next Tuesday from 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And from what I've been told, I'll be going on my first visit, and from what I've been told, there will be a lot of discussion after visiting 2 of my schools, Rose Park Middle and STEM Prep. So I would urge you all, anyone that has a voice to lend or would like to be in on the conversation, to please join us, because I'm ready to see another set of my 40 schools. So yeah.
What day is that?
October 18th. We begin at 8:30 at STEM. No, email me if you want to know where we begin, because I don't know.
All right, thank you so much. I have just a few announcements. Tomorrow, Wednesday, October 12th, the FCA at McGavock High School will be holding a Fields of Faith event at 7 p.m. at the football field. This is a national event, and the public is invited to attend. October 21st is the 25th annual Eagle Run at Andrew Jackson Elementary. The PE teacher, Susan Floyd, always does a great job, so of course I will be in attendance at that. Please join me in offering condolences and prayers for former colleague and board chair Gracie Porter. She lost her brother to Hurricane Matthew last weekend in South Carolina, I'm sorry. The Nashville Public Education Hall of Fame Luncheon will be Monday, the 17th of October at the Omni Hotel. And I want to say thank you to Shannon Hunt and her incredible team for allowing us this opportunity to honor our public high school grads. And so it's always a great event. And last, the class annual meeting is scheduled for Sunday, November the 6th at 1 p.m. at Gaylord Opryland Hotel. We will be discussing what will be our legislative policy for the upcoming 2017 legislative session. And with that, and she just walked up and left, so that must be Ms. Hunter. With that, with no further business?
We have no further business. We're dismissed.
Yep, this party is adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Are you adjourned?